Hello, it's Rebecca here, and welcome to another art video. Oh my goodness, I don't know if you could just hear that, but my cats are running around like crazy today. Anyway, so for today's video I have a speed paint, pastel painting, and it's of this rabbit named Nugget. He's a Holland Lop, and he's actually my sister's rabbit, and she had to put him down about a week and a half ago now, so I decided to surprise her with this little pet portrait of him, just to memorialize him. Wow, my cats are going crazy. I have two little kittens, and they just chase each other back and forth. Anyway, I'll put a picture up of the kittens so you can see them. But yeah, so for this painting, I always start with the eyes. I think it makes more sense to get those dark values in. It helps you kind of be able to tell the right contrast of everything in the painting. So now you can see with that dark value in and for the blacks of his eyes, it really helps you see how dark you need to go everywhere else. I've done paintings before many times where I would do everything else and then go and do the darker values in the face, like the eye and the nose, just because I felt like those needed to be kept crisp and clean. And I realized that didn't really work that well, because what I would do is put in those dark values and then look at the rest of my painting and realize there wasn't enough contrast, that the darks weren't dark enough in my painting, and I had to go back and redo some of those areas. So it's definitely a good idea, I would say, to do those dark values very early on. As you can see here, I'm still adding more darks just because it needs to match and needs to look correct. And that's something I found I really enjoy about pastels, is that you can layer and layer on top of each other to get the desired look and effect that you want. So if something isn't looking right, it's really easy with pastels to kind of go back over that and work on it and just tweak things until you get it to look the way that you like. And of course I'm using a sanded paper, which I would recommend for pastels just because it holds in that pastel dust. So you can see my painting doesn't look very dusty. It doesn't have like a lot of dust particles sitting on top, and that's because that sanded paper kind of holds those in, and that also allows you to get a lot of layers on top of each other, so that way you can work on top. You can work with multiple layers, and that grit will still accept new colors on top. And of course, if you end up not liking how a certain layer is looking, just keep working. Don't give up, just layer. And if for some reason you are starting to fill up that tooth of paper, you can still go back in with a kneaded eraser and pick up some of that pigment, so that way you can go back down on top of it. Now, if you're working with pastels and you're working on a paper that doesn't have that sanded tooth, you can very easily fill up the tooth of the paper and won't be able to get any more layers on top of that. And if you're finding that's happening to you, what I would recommend is a workable fixative. You can find workable fixatives pretty much anywhere. At your local craft store, they should have one. These should be used in the middle of a painting, like I said, if you want to get more layers and you filled up the tooth. But I would be careful with these because they will darken whatever colors you have down. What they do is they kind of make the pastels a little bit more translucent, so you'll be able to see the colors underneath. And with darks, they make them very dark, and then with lighter pastels, they kind of make them less opaque and dull them. So if you're using that, it can be a great way to add some texture back into your paper, and then you can go back on top and add those lighter values in again. But don't use it at the end of your painting because you'll just dull out the colors that you have. And you can see here what I'm doing is going back over with some darker colors and adding some texture in with the fur. And this is really the details that help set your painting apart and make it look more realistic. So I would definitely take your time here and go ahead and add those base layers in, like I'm doing with this orangey color. You can see I'm just laying them down. I'm not paying much attention to their exact location, just blocking them in. Then I'm blocking in the white colors around and blending those out. And this is how I normally work with pastels. Then I go back in and add the dark colors, some shadows, blend those out, and then I will go back in with the details now and add the little strokes of fur, all of the little patterns in the fur, and the little stray hairs, so the little white hairs that are in the orange patches and the little orange hairs that are in the white patches. And that will just help it give a very realistic and a fluffier effect for this bunny. And quickly, I did also want to mention that I am using UArt sanded paper in the grit that is 600. And that is just a tan beige kind of paper. You can see I'm covering that up on the back of the bunny now. But I did want to mention that the background I actually filled in with pastels myself. So I used a soft pastel for the background. I'm using more harder pastels for the bunny, but the soft pastel just has a larger, smoother coverage, and you need less of it to get a wider coverage. So I just used a soft pastel stick, went around the whole outside of the bunny, smoothed it in with my fingers, and that's how I got that. So if you're using the UArt paper and you kind of want that colored background that you see a lot of more expensive pastel papers have, that's what I would recommend. Just get a cheap set of soft pastels and you can change the background to anything you want. And then, like always, at the end of a pastel painting, I have to go back, actually at the end of any painting, I have to go back and add more darks. Like I said before, by the end I always feel like I need to darken those darks just a little bit. That really helps when you punch that contrast to make it feel realistic. Well, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Be awesome, and I'll see you soon. Bye.